Hi everyone, it's obviously me, your DM. I thought it might be good to make a showcase, or probably a few of them, because I often find myself coming up with character stunts and ideas, and I never really get to use them fully, as well as I know some of you guys sometimes have a little bit of difficulty figuring what to do in a fight and how to make fights dramatic and everything. So unfortunately, I don't have the experience playing Fate myself. I've only DM'd it, so I usually just only have the DM's perspective. But I thought it would be good to kind of try to showcase how I would narrate a fight between characters in the game so far, and all the different ways that you can use compels, invokes, stunts, and that sort of thing. So as we're getting started, first thing to note is that each of these characters have different sheets, and I am not doing the one doing the recording. That's actually Marisol. So first things first, we have the setup of the fight. Usually when we do fights, we just assume it's like an empty room. In this case, I'm going to try to make it a little bit more interesting. We already have the setup as being in the Peacemaker headquarters parking lot, and one of the scene aspects there is that there are automated cars, which means they're going to be moving around. Now, normally the automated cars have safety provisions in them that would keep them from running into people, but for the sake of this fight, we're going to assume that those have been either disabled or otherwise aren't working correctly. So this is a bit more dangerous of a situation for both sides. We're going to generally assume that this fight is intended to be non-lethal, but there will be lethal means used throughout the fight. If it gets to a point where one side is clearly slaughtering another, or we now need to bullshit our way as to why somebody didn't get shot in the head, we'll do that accordingly. It is JoJo, and this is all just theoretical anyway, so technically they could all just cut each other's heads off and whatever, it's Highlander time. For the sake of this fight as well, I'm using the group fight format, although that's not really necessary. I just thought it would be easier to have certain aspects and just have a nice visualization of certain things going on in this fight. For example, on the side of the Kevan sisters, you will notice, as you can see, they have two aspects above their box, which is just old men must die and drunk, which means they share that aspect. They also have a goal, generally bother father. That's not really an important thing. You can invoke that if you'd like to. I'm working towards my goal. This is what helps me get that. If you have the dice for it, feel free. On Kev's side, you see that he is disappointed in you, and you're going to learn today kind of similar aspects, but both can be invoked obviously on a turn, and then his goal is just to state that he's not that old because he's Kevan. He still wants to fight. Another thing to consider about this fight that may be different from some of your other fights is that Katie and Alkesha have family stunts. Family stunts are kind of a thing that I came up with a long time ago in our campaign, probably around Arc 1, and never really got to use much of. But they're basically stunts that when you're working with somebody, you both get some kind of benefit. Usually both of you have a family stunt related to the other person, so by working in tandem with that person to do things, you get benefits. Both of you get different benefits too. In the case of the Kevan family, they all have mathematical calculation stands. So when they work together, it's like having additional processors that allow them to do certain things that they normally wouldn't be able to. For the purposes of this fight, I've also changed and rebalanced some of their fate point pools. Kitty originally only had one. She now has 3 because her actual character pool, or her actual character abilities are very small, and she can't really fight like Alkesha can. So it seemed a bit unbalanced for her to only have 1 fate point. Alkesha has had her fate points reduced from 4 to 2, and she has her health pool changed, and I'll go over that when I go over her sheet. For Kev, I have adjusted there were things about him that I've never noticed before because I've never really had to use him in a combat against you guys, but he had 7 physical shift boxes, which is an insane amount for a Fate character. It'd be really hard to kill him. So that is adjusted down to 5, and his mental stress is adjusted from 5 to 4. In addition, his fate points have been changed from 1 to 3 for the purposes of this fight. But normally, walking around Kev, it depends on the circumstances, how many fate points you would have. For your reference as players, enemies tend to have a shared fate point pool that's about as big as many players are involved in the scene. So if there are 4 of you fighting a group of let's just say the ELO, all of them, they all only have 4 fate points that they can access between themselves. So that's generally how that works. In this case, I'm just giving him 3 because otherwise he would probably get slaughtered for reasons that you will understand later. And it probably sounds crazy, but you'll see in a moment here. So to quickly go over Alkesha's sheet, those of you who have never seen this sheet before or maybe just don't remember it, you can see that her various aspects are all filled in from her roll 20. She is prone to rash decisions. She has Fury of the Youth as her high concept. And she has an additional aspect, Sicko Mode. Now, because she's drunk, she'll be able to invoke that. Sicko Mode is just what she calls when she gets drunk and unreasonable. You can see that she has a few stunts that are worth noting. One is TikTok. So when she uses Work It, which is only a +1 and succeeds against a target, she starts a timer. So within 3 rounds, if the target, basically they're at that point marked for demise, or not exactly automatic demise, but demise. After 3 rounds, after she succeeds with that roll, the party bus will crash through the nearest wall and attempt to run the victim over. So you can see that there's also an additional bit of text to this. The attack has a passive opposition of +2 the amount of shifts she succeeded with. So that means when she succeeded, like if she succeeded with, like, let's say a 6, when that party bus comes in, it comes in with an 8 plus the amount of shifts that she succeeded with, and will always cause at least 1 shift of damage. So that means if she is rolling against Kev, and let's say Kev rolls a 5 and she rolls a 6, that means that the party bus comes in initially with a 2, and then it has a 2 plus 1. Yeah, so it's a 3. Passive opposition of 3, just to dodge it. And it will always cause at least 1 shift of damage. So even if it misses, it causes a shift. This is a sort of stunt where what you want to do basically is stack your dice to the ceiling so you succeed as high as you can over your opponent. And then you have basically what is a second automatic attack that will do at least 1 shift of damage. Also, you can see in the bottom text, it says that because this isn't a stand power or very obvious, targets may be unaware of the incoming assault. That means that it's possible through the narration for Alkesha to distract someone, so they just automatically get hit, and there's like very little chance that they would even be able to dodge or guard themselves properly. It's basically a stealth attack that comes out of nowhere. It's just a party bus running through a wall and running someone down. So depending on the circumstances, that could end a fight, especially if she's already like inflicted a consequence on someone or has created such an advantage for herself that it would be rather ridiculous for someone to like be able to pay attention to all her laser guns going off and then not get hit by, just flat out hit by a bus. Another thing that she has that wouldn't be useful in this, but maybe could if I really wanted to like stretch my legs. She has a stunt called Crazy Kids. It just lets her whip a mob into a frenzy more or less, and she gets a big bonus if they're mostly her age. So those 2 stunts are just kind of reflective of who Alkesha is as a person. You also see further down that she has 2 family stunts, which are one that pairs with Katie, where she creates a homing shot with her guns. The target basically can't dodge it. They can guard against it, but they can't dodge it because it's a homing shot. And it works even if she can't see the target, and they have an automatic +2 to their roll, which means that anytime she fires Ricochet while she's with her sister, she has a +2 and the shot can't be dodged. So it's pretty powerful. I may pare that down to a +1 because that's kind of ridiculous. And then she also has a stunt with Kev where she basically gets unlimited distance to her shots and how far she can bank them. So as you can see, if all 3 of them were working together, then she can use the hunt you down stunt and the father-daughter dance stunt and basically ricochet and create homing shots at an basically unlimited distance as long as she can see the target. So if she sees somebody like, you know, in a distant car driving away, like a mile down the desert, she can like bank shots off of rocks, cacti, other vehicles, etc., and basically like hit the driver, which is extremely, extremely powerful, but it requires all 3 of them to be working together. Moving on to Katie Kevan real quick. You can see you probably have seen her sheet before, either because she's been in a Nirvana thing or something else. I'd say she has like a 6 in gravity at this point. She's been around enough weird stuff. Her stunts are mostly based on just probability. She can alter the hit rate of different attacks that people are doing. I'm going to say hot and cold probably needs a little work there. I'll just figure it out on the fly. And then slots, I think probably needs a little work. I'll say that for every additional or like shared symbol you get, so if you get like 2+2 die or 3+2 die or whatever, every time there's like more than one of the same die, you can add like a shift of damage to your damage. We'll see how that works. She also has a family stunt with Alkesha, her own stunt. So this is how that usually works, and you'll be able to see it. Something called double rainbow, which means that when she creates an advantage, she can use 1+2 on the round that she's on, and then a plus, like that advantage can be used +2 on that round by Alkesha likely, or Kev if she were working with Kev. And then on the next round, she creates a subsequent +2 that she doesn't need to roll for. So she's creating a series of +2s. That's why it's called double rainbow. It's like a cascade of probability. She gets that because she is with Alkesha, and thus she's ricocheting probability. And then her stunt with Kev is called Swish Swish, basically improves her speed like dramatically, making her much faster reflexively and giving her a role when she needs to quickly create advantages for other people or herself. So this is why, again, like them all working together is very strong. When she goes to create the double rainbow of like cascading stunts, she then gets a +2 to do that, which is already pretty strong, because if she gets over a certain amount while she, like, I believe it's 3 or 4, basically you succeed with style while creating an advantage. That means you have a +4. So instead of a +2, I believe is how that works. So it might be a +3. I have to reread the rules instead of a +4. I'm going to actually just pare that down to a +3, because +4 is pretty ridiculously powerful. So that just means that she has a higher chance then of creating a +3 and a series of +3s instead of +2s, which, in Fate can be very huge. That could mean completely slaughtering an opponent, stepping way outside their consequence, what they can absorb, that sort of thing. It also gives her the ability where she would be doing something reflexively. It gets treated as a +4. So in the, whatever other stats she would use, doesn't matter. If she's trying to dodge a bullet, for example, she has a +4 to the roll. Instead of whatever other stats she would have to worry about. So technically could be like bullet time. And that's really what it's intended to be like. That's when she's working with Kev. Looking then at, you can also see that Katie is physically weaker than Alkesha. Alkesha is very resilient at this point. She's gone through police training and is a party girl of like street styler proportions and has been through quite a bit. So she's actually tankier than you might expect. Alkesha has 4 physical stress boxes and 2 mental. Katie has 2 physical stress boxes and 2 mental. So what that generally means is that for this kind of setup, Katie's like a more of a backline supporter type of person who can create advantages very easily and even do some pretty significant damage if she wants to, because she can use that Kevan stunt to do hand-to-hand combat, which is basically, again, bullet time punching people or, slow motion kung fu. She may be able to like do significant damage to somebody with the combination of all her stunts and her family stunts. But mostly she's meant to support and provide like kind of, probability boosting. And then finally, looking at Kev's stand, or his sheet rather, you can see that not much has changed since the ELO arc. I haven't really combined things from the background world sheets, because these guys were already very powerful, and it may not be it's like I could add a bunch of stuff, but like how much of it is going to be used, and like you guys aren't usually going to want to fight them. So you can see that Kev has the same stunts that you may remember. Some of these are not really relevant anymore. I do probably have to fix those, like being able to drag people in or out of zones. I would instead say that if he succeeds on an attack, he creates a +1 to his next attack against that target as he drags them forward or to a better position. So the idea is with using drift, he's like hitting someone with basically telekinetic force and then dragging them into a different area where he gains a +1 because it's more advantageous for him. It's a half advantage thing. It's +1 may not sound like a lot, but he has a 6 in drift. I'll probably have to pare that down, but for the purposes of this demonstration, fighting against Alkesha's Ricochet, he probably actually needs that. Long Arm of the Law is his attack, so that means that's just generally the effects of being moved. If you try to resist that, you receive 2 shifts of damage. If you fail resisting it, so you would have to roll something to resist it. If you fail, you get just hit with 2 extra shifts as you're dragged along. So that means once he hits you, if you want to resist being moved, you would roll power or durability or something, unless your stand ability directly negates you being moved, which is a possibility. But in any event, that means that if he hits you and you want to not move, you have to roll power, durability, whatever it is. And if you don't pass basically his initial, so it allows you to roll twice defensively. Like you're trying to roll against whatever his drift attack was. So if I roll his drift and he gets a 4. So he gets a 4. Let's just say you roll a 3 on your initial like dodge of his attack. That means that you would have to roll against the 4 if you want to resist. And if you don't, then you take the 1 from the drift hit, and then you take 2 more. So you take 3 shifts total for that action. That may sound like a mouthful, but during the demonstration, hopefully it'll all look like and flow properly. If not, then obviously I have things I need to adjust. Deadeye is his other stunt. So when he creates an advantage, his next attack, it's not to be rolled against. It only has a passive opposition, and that passive opposition is 2. I may change that number to be reflective of how many refresh points you have, your fate points, your potential, basically. So for some of you, that may be a 4. Some of you, that may be a 1. But in any event, kind of like how much you can dodge fate, as it were, your ability to flex against destiny, because that's what Kev is a heavenly enforcer. So if you don't have that flexibility, he's more likely to hit you with his next attack. So that's when he creates an advantage. This is him lining up a shot. So let's just say theoretically he used this on someone that has 1 fate point, like, I don't know, U2 or something. That means that U2 has, on the next attack, he only has a 1 as his defense, and Kev has now a +2 as on his attack, not counting anything like invokes. So it's already a bad time. For someone like U2, that means now, that means dealing with a 9 incoming damage against a 1 defense. So what do you do in this situation? What you'd want to do is try to actively keep Kev from being able to create an advantage against you, because you know he's a sniper, and you know that if he's trying to line up a shot, you're gonna be screwed pretty badly. So the idea here is not so much to worry about like, what do I do like against if he does line up a shot. The idea is to try to keep him from lining up a shot as much as possible, because that advantage that he has right now of a 9 over a 1 is the same as if somebody had dumped 4 fate points to just like completely bowl you 2 over, like, and just annihilate them. And that doesn't actually include how many fate points he could burn. So just theoretically in this situation, if he has an 8 and he has 3 fate points in this particular fight, that means he can add 6, and then we end up with a 14 hit attack, a 14 shift damage, not including any other bonuses that he may have from something like Long Arm of the Law or other consequences he may have inflicted on the target. In other words, that's a one shot for a lot of people. 14 shifts is like your 3 box, your 6 box, your 4 box, and better hope your mod box isn't filled by that point. That is basically, for a lot of people though, it's more or less a one shot. If you take that sort of hit, your best bet is to concede, because you're going to be left with a mild consequence box, maybe. And even if you are, you're going to be dealing with the rest of the fight with that sort of damage going on. It's usually best to just like concede at that point, unless you really want to drag it out, or you think that you have a stand ability that's going to turn the tables dramatically. Some people may. For example, one of you may have an ability that just completely screws him over very badly. But you have to know that any attempt that you make, he also can just freely invoke the +2 from your severe and your moderate, like without even spending a fate point. So he just automatically has a +4 to his next attack as well. So that's part of what makes Kev so deadly. I actually never imported his family stunts. Actually, it looks like I don't think I gave him any. I don't think he needs them. I could have sworn that I did give him some, but I really don't think that he needs family stunts right now. At some point I probably will, but I think it's enough that he is just a ridiculous monster with drift. You also see that Kev has gravity feats, which they don't, because he has higher gravity, far higher gravity. And his gravity feats are that he can just stare at someone and knows that they're generally guilty of something. And once per session. So this is a zone control one. It's a holdover from our old stunt system, but I can probably just easily alter this to say that anyone that's, within a certain range of him, just generally within the narration, we'll say usually like what we'll consider to be, say 15 meters, I believe is what 2 zones were said to be in the material. So 15 meters, which is if you are within 50 feet of him, he can free space. I may have to pare that down. It's pretty strong. Once he freezes space around himself, that means it's basically like solid space. You need to roll against a passive opposition of 4 just to move. So it means if you're not rolling higher than 4, you're not moving. There are things you can do that don't require you to move. It's an incredibly strong feat. It's meant to only be used once per session, as mentioned, and I may not use it in this fight, but I might just showcase it because I don't know that I've ever had to mechanically do that. It also vanishes after 30 seconds. Now, in Fate, we don't really use the same 5e time per round. It's more determined by kind of the flow of the fight and how the narration is going. But if we wanted to, then we could say that every round is then, I believe, 6 seconds. So we're talking 5 rounds that would last. Extremely still very, 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 very powerful. But for the purposes of this fight, I would say that probably lasts around 2 to 3 rounds. And I may pare that time down of 30 seconds to be more in line with what we know of JoJo characters being able to freeze things. Obviously, Time Stop only had it had 5 seconds. Now, Time Stop meant stopping all time, and you couldn't act, period, unless you also had time abilities. So that is a special case. But in this case, 30 seconds is kind of just what I was working with. So we'll keep it at 30 seconds for now. Probably will never come up in one of the games, I'm sure. You never know, but it probably won't. So now that we have everything explained, kind of, and I'm sorry if that was a very long explanation, but like hopefully we can probably like mark this in the annotations between like part 1 explanation, part 2 actual fight. We have the whole setup here. We have the invokes, the fate points, the stunts. We've gone through them. We have the scene aspects. Now is the time for the actual fight.